one act of kindness could change your destiny forever, Mara helped a frail old woman and received a mysterious bar of gold. But when jealousy creeps in and greed takes over, the price becomes deadly. Why was the gold given? What curse does it carry? And who will survive the consequences? This is the kindness that changed everything. Stay with us. You won't believe what happens next. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a dull golden haze over the sprawling city of Kenosha. Dust stirred lazily in the late afternoon heat, kicked up by the hurried feet of vendors, students and laborers navigating the cracked sidewalks and narrow alleys. In the midst of it all, Mara walked with quiet determination, her shoes worn thin and her spirit weathered, but not broken. At her side strode Jasper, his lanky frame hunched beneath a threadbare jacket, and his eyes darting from shop to street corner. He was nervous. They were late again. "You sure this place even exists?" he muttered, brushing sweat from his brow as they turned onto a quieter side street. "I saw the ad posted on the bulletin at the market," Mara replied, her voice calm despite the ache in her feet. "It's a small restaurant looking for help. They said today's the last day to apply." Jasper grunted. "Let's just hope they haven't already given the job to someone else." "We can't keep chasing shadows, Mara." Mara didn't answer. She focused on the road ahead, heart tugging at the hope that maybe, just maybe, this job could be the one to change things. Rent was due in 3 days. The landlord had already threatened to throw them out. She and Jasper had both been out of work for months, surviving on odd jobs and kindness. Mostly kindness. But just as they turned the corner toward the alley that led to the restaurant, something stopped Mara in her tracks. A soft, ragged cough, then the sound of something heavy dragging across stone. She turned her head and saw her, an old woman, frail and bent, clutching a rusted tin bucket that looked far too heavy for her thin arms. Water sloshed over the edges as she tried to lift it, only to stumble forward and nearly fall. Her head was wrapped in a faded scarf, and her clothes hung off her like curtains on a broken rod. Mara instinctively stepped forward. "Wait!" Jasper said sharply, grabbing her arm. "Don't. We don't have time. We're already late." "She needs help," Mara replied, her voice firm but gentle. "So do we," he snapped. "This job could be our last chance." Mara hesitated. She looked at the old woman, then at the narrow alley where opportunity waited like a whisper of hope, but her heart had already made the choice. "Then go ahead without me," she said softly. "I'll catch up." Jasper's jaw clenched. He muttered something under his breath and turned away, disappearing down the alley. Mara didn't watch him go. She walked toward the woman instead. "Let me help you," she said kindly. The old woman looked up with tired eyes that held centuries of sorrow and a flicker of surprise. She nodded almost imperceptibly and released the bucket into Mara's waiting hands. It was heavier than it looked. Water from a nearby well, perhaps the only source in this part of the city, had to be carried long distances for cooking, cleaning, survival. As they walked, the old woman remained silent, only pointing once toward the far end of the street. Mara followed, adjusting her grip and ignoring the dull ache in her arms. She wasn't doing this for a reward. She had no expectation of thanks. Something in her simply couldn't let someone struggle alone, not when she could ease the burden, even for a moment. The woman led her through winding alleys until they reached a crumbling stone dwelling nestled beneath a canopy of overgrown vines. The iron door creaked open as she stepped inside, motioning for Mara to set the bucket down by a wash basin. Inside the home was dark but warm. Earthen pots lined the shelves and dried herbs hung from the ceiling. There was a smell of sage and something older, like the passage of time itself. "Sit," the woman said in a gravelly whisper. Mara sat on a wooden stool near the hearth. The old woman disappeared into the back room. When she returned, she held something wrapped in a piece of velvet cloth. Her hands trembled slightly as she offered it to Mara. "What is it?" Mara asked, surprised. "A gift," the woman replied, "for your kindness." Mara opened the cloth and gasped. Inside was a bar of gold smooth, gleaming and unmistakably real. "I can't accept this," Mara stammered. "I didn't do anything to deserve." "You did," the old woman interrupted. "You chose compassion when you could have walked away. That is rare in this world." Mara stared at the gold heart pounding. This could change her life. Pay the rent, buy food, maybe even give her and Jasper a fresh start. "But listen to me carefully," the woman continued, her eyes dark and piercing. "You must not spend it, not yet. Keep it safe for 7 days, only then will you know how to use it." Mara blinked. "Why 7 days?" The woman smiled faintly. "Because time reveals truth. What seems like a blessing today may grow into something else tomorrow. Promise me you'll wait." Mara hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." The woman seemed satisfied. "Good. Then go. But remember, this gift carries weight. How you use it will shape everything." Mara carefully wrapped the gold again and tucked it deep into her bag. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. "Thank you," she said sincerely. The old woman nodded once and turned back to her hearth, already fading into shadow. Outside, the sky was streaked with violet and rose as twilight fell. The air smelled of dust and jasmine. Mara walked quickly, heart thudding in her chest, not from fear, but from the strange, dazzling hope now pulsing through her veins. She couldn't wait to find Jasper. He would never believe it. She reached the corner of the alley where they had parted and looked down. There was no sign of him. Had he gone ahead to the restaurant? Had he waited? Her phone was dead, no way to call him, but she didn't care. For the first time in months, the weight of despair had lifted. Something new and powerful stirred in her, a feeling she hadn't known in so long possibility. As she moved through the city, past flickering lanterns, and the rhythmic hum of evening prayers echoing from doorways, she imagined what the next 7 days might hold. Was it real gold? Would it bring luck or trouble? Could it really change her life? Mara didn't know, but she held her promise close, tucked alongside the velvet cloth and the bar of gold that felt heavier with meaning than with metal. She was just a girl who helped a stranger, but perhaps that was where all great stories began, with a choice, with kindness, with the courage to stop even when the world was rushing by. She walked into the deepening dusk, unaware that the next 7 days would test everything she believed about herself, about fate, and about the true cost of compassion. But for now, all she knew was this: hope had returned, and with it the chance for something extraordinary. The wind picked up that evening in Kenosha, sweeping through the alleyways and tangled rooftops like a whispered warning. The city lights shimmered in the distance, their glow softened by the rising dusk as Mara hurried down the narrow street, her heart thudding with excitement. Clutched in her bag was the bar of gold, its impossible weight pressing against her ribs, not from burden, but from sheer wonder. Her steps were light, but her thoughts raced. She had to find Jasper. He would understand. He had to. After everything they'd been through together, after all the nights spent huddled against hunger and cold, dreaming of a break, a miracle, something to lift them out of survival. This was it. She could feel it. They would rise together now. She found him leaning against the faded brick wall near their apartment complex, cigarette dangling from his lips, his eyes glazed in the orange glow of a street lamp. He looked up as she ran toward him, her hair wild from the wind and her breath catching in excitement. "Jasper!" she cried. "You won't believe what happened." He raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting bad news. "You didn't make it to the interview, did you?" "No," she said breathlessly. "I didn't. But something else happened. Something amazing." He gave a hollow laugh. "Amazing. That's a first. She pulled him into the stairwell to avoid prying eyes, lowered her voice and began to tell him everything. The old woman, the heavy bucket, the hidden home with its strange warmth, the mysterious bar of gold, and the cryptic instructions. At first, Jasper said nothing. He just stared at her, the cigarette burning slowly between his fingers. Then in a low voice he said, "You're kidding." She shook her head, her eyes shining. "I'm serious. It's real. I didn't ask for anything, Jasper. I just helped her. And she gave me this." She pulled the velvet cloth from her bag and gently unwrapped the bar. The gold caught the light like liquid fire, its smooth surface gleaming with otherworldly luster. Jasper's gaze locked on it. Everything about him shifted. He snatched the bar from her hands with more force than necessary, turning it over in his palms. His eyes narrowed. "Are you sure it's real?" he asked, though his voice trembled with a reverent greed. "Have you tested it?" "I don't need to," she said softly. "I just know. And she told me to wait 7 days to keep it safe before I use it." Jasper scoffed. 7 days? That's ridiculous. What difference does 7 days make? You should sell it now. We could pay the rent, buy food, get out of this place. She said waiting would reveal the truth. Mara insisted. "I think there's more to it, something deeper." He handed it back to her too quickly, too smoothly. "Right, sure if you say so." But the fire in his eyes had already been lit, and Mara, in her joy and trust, didn't see the shadows forming behind it that night, while she drifted into sleep with dreams of a better tomorrow. Jasper lay awake, the image of the gold dancing in his mind like a siren song. He couldn't shake it. Why her? Why not him? He had suffered just as much, if not more, slept on the same floors, gone hungry on the same days. He had scraped and fought and survived, and she had simply helped an old woman with a bucket and been handed a fortune. It wasn't fair. He needed to know more, so the next morning, while Mara was out buying bread with the last of their coins, Jasper slipped away and retraced the steps she had described, past the corner where they'd parted, down the winding alley toward the edge of the city's forgotten quarter. He didn't bring a bucket, but he brought something else. A mask of charm. The old woman was outside, her crumbling home, hanging herbs to dry. Her back was bent, but her eyes were sharp as glass. "Good morning," Jasper said, smiling with a sheepish humility. "I think you met my friend Mara yesterday." Her hands paused. "I just wanted to thank you," he continued. "She told me about your kindness and the gift. It was extraordinary." The old woman nodded slowly, saying nothing. Jasper stepped closer. "I was wondering if perhaps there was something I could do to help you too." She studied him in silence. Then, to his surprise, she opened the door and beckoned him inside. He followed, eager, a flicker of triumph blooming in his chest. Inside, the shadows felt deeper than before. The hearth crackled, casting orange light on the walls. The scent of sage returned, mixed now with something bitter like burnt cinnamon. She gestured for him to sit. He obeyed. Then she turned to him, her voice calm, but laced with a strange weight. "Why are you here truly?" He blinked. "I told you I want to help." She tilted her head. "Do you?" He hesitated, just for a second. "Yes, son. Then let us test your heart." She disappeared into the back and returned with a small black stone which she placed in his hands. "Close your eyes," she said. He did. The stone warmed in his palms, then burned. Flashes darted behind his eyelids. His memories, his desires, Mara's laughter, his resentment, his envy, and gold, gold, gold. He opened his eyes, breath shallow. The old woman was watching. "Your heart is not clean," she said softly, "but neither is it lost." She reached beneath her cloak and pulled out a single gold bar, smaller than the one she had given Mara, and placed it on the table between them. "Take this," she said. "Wait 7 days. If you do, all will unfold as it should." Jasper stared at it. It looked real heavy, solid but smaller, less. Why? Why was his less? Was it because she didn't trust him? Because he wasn't as pure as Mara? He forced a smile, thanked her, and took the gold. But even as he walked out the door, the storm inside him grew. He would return. He would prove that he was worth more. That night, long after the city had gone quiet, and even the stray dogs had curled into sleep, Jasper crept back to the woman's home. He moved like a shadow. He knew she would be asleep, or so he hoped. He slipped through a window at the back, landing quietly in the herb-scented kitchen. The hearth had gone cold. The house was silent. He searched drawers, cupboards, floorboards. Finally, in a clay pot, behind a stack of dried corn husks, he found them. Gold bars. 3. He took them all. Heart pounding, he wrapped them in his jacket and slipped out the way he came. He didn't see the glimmer of eyes watching from the corner, didn't hear the soft, sorrowful sigh that followed his exit back at the apartment. Jasper hid the bars in a bag under the loose floorboard near the closet. He barely slept. His mind was alive with plans. How to sell them, where to go, how to start anew without Mara. She didn't need to know. She would only complicate things with her talk of waiting, of promises and fate. He would make his own fate. But when morning came, and Mara greeted him with sleepy eyes and soft chatter, something about her smile made the weight of the gold suddenly feel heavier. Guilt tugged at the edges of his thoughts, but he shoved it down. He told her nothing. Meanwhile, far across the city, the old woman sat in her quiet home, hands folded in her lap. She was not angry. She was waiting, because time reveals truth, and truth demands its price. The days after the theft passed with an uneasy stillness, like the quiet before a storm. Jasper went about his routine, eating, walking, even cracking the occasional forced joke. But there was something different in his eyes now, something wild and restless. Mara noticed it immediately. He had always been impulsive, a little sharp-edged, but this was different. His smiles didn't reach his eyes. His sleep was troubled. His hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was watching, and more than once Mara caught him staring at her, not with love or warmth, but something colder, calculating, distant. She tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just stressed. After all, they were on the brink of something new, weren't they? A golden future. But still something gnawed at her, a feeling she couldn't shake. Then on the third night, everything began to unravel. It started with a knock at the door, soft, rhythmic, as though it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mara opened it. No one was there. She stepped outside, looked up and down the corridor, nothing but shadows. She turned back, then froze. At the far end of the hallway, just beyond the reach of the flickering bulb overhead, stood a figure, cloaked still, the old woman. Her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, met Mara's with an intensity that froze the breath in her chest. But before Mara could say a word, the woman was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. Mara slammed the door, her heart pounding. "Jasper!" she whispered. "She's here." He looked up from the chair, startled. "Who?" "The old woman," she said, voice shaking. "I saw her. She was in the hall, just now, staring." Jasper's expression darkened. "You're imagining things. I know what I saw." He got up quickly, maybe too quickly. "You're just nervous. That gold has you on edge." "No," Mara whispered, backing away from the door. "She knows something. I saw it in her eyes, and that was when it began, the visions." At first, Jasper tried to ignore them. A shadow here, a whisper there, a cold gust of wind in a sealed room. He chalked it up to nerves, to stress, but the visions grew stronger. He would catch the old woman's reflection in a mirror that didn't belong to her, hear her voice whispering his name from the drain of the sink, smell the scent of sage in the dead of night, thick and suffocating. Worst of all were the dreams. In them, he was running through endless corridors, chased by a faceless figure in a cloak. Gold bars tumbled from his arms as he ran, melting into sand. And always, just before waking, he would hear her voice. "Return what was not yours, or it shall consume you." He stopped sleeping. His eyes grew hollow. He snapped at Mara. He jumped at shadows. He began talking to himself under his breath. One night, Mara found him in the kitchen, standing motionless in front of the open fridge, his eyes vacant, sweat running down his face. "Jasper," she whispered, "what's happening to you?" He turned slowly, and for a terrifying moment she didn't recognize him. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale, his jaw clenched like he was fighting some internal storm. "You think I don't know what this is?" he muttered. "She's trying to scare me, that old witch. But she won't win. I earned this. I deserve it." Mara stepped back. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing," he barked. "Forget it." But she couldn't. She wouldn't. That night, as he paced the apartment muttering, Mara quietly opened the closet and pried up the loose floorboard. She found the bag. Inside, 3 gold bars. Her breath caught in her throat. It felt like a punch to the chest. She staggered back, the truth crashing down like a wave. He had stolen from the old woman. Her heart broke. Not just from the betrayal, but from the weight of the danger they were now under. She had seen the old woman's eyes. This wasn't just a test of morality. It was something deeper. Ancient binding. When Jasper returned to the room and saw the look on her face, he knew. She knew. He froze. "You went through my things," he said, voice low. "You lied to me," she replied, her voice shaking. "You stole from her, Jasper. What have you done?" He didn't answer. Instead, he laughed. A terrible, brittle laugh that sent shivers down her spine. "Do you think she's some kind of goddess?" he spat. "She's just an old woman in rags. I took what she was hiding. That's all." "She gave us a chance," Mara whispered. "She gave me a gift and a warning, and you broke it." Jasper's eyes flared with rage. "She gave you everything. She gave me crumbs. You think I was going to let that stand?" Mara stepped back. "Jasper, listen to me," she pleaded. "Return the gold. Maybe it's not too late." But he wasn't listening. He was hearing something else. Voices. A soft chanting, like 1,000 whispers echoing in the back of his mind. He clutched his head, staggered, then screamed, "Make it stop!" Mara ran to him, trying to hold him, but he pushed her away, and then the lights flickered. The room went cold, and the old woman appeared. This time she stood in the center of the room. Not a vision, not a dream, real. Her eyes burned with sadness and judgment. "Jasper," she said, her voice echoing with otherworldly power. "You were warned." He fell to his knees, clutching the gold bars. "I'll give them back," he cried. Take them all. It is no longer about the gold," she said, stepping closer. "It is about your heart." "I was desperate," he sobbed. "We had nothing. I just wanted more." She knelt before him, placing a hand on his head. "You were not cursed for wanting," she said gently, "but for taking what was not given." Then she turned to Mara. "You must leave him now." "What?" Mara gasped. "I can't just. If you stay, he will drag you into his fate. This path is his alone now." Mara hesitated. Tears filled her eyes. "I love him," she whispered. But the old woman shook her head. Sometimes love must let go, especially when it cannot save. And then, in a flash of golden light, she vanished. Jasper collapsed. Days passed. The Mara tried to help him, at first. But Jasper was no longer the man she knew. He barely spoke. He stared at walls. He laughed at nothing. He scribbled nonsense on scraps of paper. His once vibrant mind shattered. He would mutter about gold, about eyes watching him, about fire under his skin. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, just deteriorated. One day, Mara returned from the market to find the apartment empty, the floorboard torn up, the gold gone. Jasper had vanished. Some say he was seen wandering the train tracks outside Kenosha, clutching the bag of gold, screaming at voices no one else could hear. Others claimed he dug a hole in the hills beyond the city, trying to bury the bars, only to dig them up again. Hours later, screaming that they had fused to his bones. No one knows what truly happened to him, but Mara, she never saw him again. 7 days after receiving her own bar of gold, she returned to the old woman's home. It stood as it always had, quiet, unassuming. The door creaked open before she could knock. Inside, the woman sat by the fire. Mara stepped forward and held out the gold bar. "I waited," she said, "just like you told me." The old woman nodded, smiling faintly. "Then it is time." She gestured to a small box on the table. Inside was a map, a deed, a letter, and a key. "Your kindness," the woman said, "unlocked more than gold. It unlocked a destiny. Go build, give. Let the gold be a seed, not a crown." Tears streamed down Mara's face. "Thank you," she whispered, but the woman was already fading into the firelight, her presence dissolving like smoke on the wind. Mara left the house for the last time, her heart heavy with loss, but steady with purpose. She would honor the gift. She would carry the lesson, because in a world hungry for more, she had learned the greatest truth. Kindness gives, greed devours. And while one had led to ruin, the other would change everything. Thank you so much for staying with us through the kindness that changed everything, we hope. Mara's journey and Jasper's tragic choices stirred something deep in your heart. This African love story reminds us that compassion can open doors, but greed always finds a way to close them. If this story moved you, please subscribe. More powerful tales of love, mystery, and destiny. And don't forget to leave a comment below. What would you have done in Mara's place? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep the flame alive.